Israel is vowing to protect Syria's Druze minority. It comes following the second day of strikes against government forces in southwestern Syria. Syrian authorities announced a ceasefire after government forces entered a key city in the province of Sweida. Dozens of people were killed in clashes following a series of kidnappings between members of the Druze community and Sunni Bedouin tribes. For more on the story, we can bring in France 24's Leela Jacinto. Leela, this is not the first outbreak of clashes involving the Druze minority since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. Why does this keep reoccurring?
Well, it's recurring because the issues are deep, explosive, and extremely fundamental. I mean, it involves the security of a religious minority group. It involves a weakened state and how weakened states draw in regional players. And in a sense, these were the fears that many Syrians had when the Assad regime fell in December, and these fears are turning out to come true. To what extent depends on who you ask. But you're absolutely right, because we did see clashes between the Syrian Druze community back in April and May. This was between Druze fighters and militias aligned with the Syrian government of President Ahmad Shara. Now, when these clashes happened, and they were deadly clashes, the government and local Druze community leaders and religious leaders agreed to a ceasefire deal. Under the deal, it was agreed that the Syrian government in Damascus would allow the Druze to have a local police force and law enforcement apparatus in Sweida. This is Sweida. This is a province, as you said, in southern Syria, and it's considered the heartland of Syria's Kurdish community. Now, herein lies the heart of the problem, because under the ceasefire deal, we're really talking, the agreement was local Druze law enforcement and police forces secures this province. We are not talking about state forces. And President Shara has this real challenge of trying to build a unified army, a unified military, and disbanding all these local militias. So these clashes now actually happened. It's a local problem. A Druze community member, apparently, this is according to the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, there was a Druze member who was stopped at a checkpoint in Sweida that was set up by Sunni Arab Bedouin tribes. When the government forces arrived to intervene in this issue, they were seen as siding with the Bedouin tribes. The Druze, they are a minority. They are a breakup of a Shiite sect. And so they do not trust, or some of them do not trust, the government forces. So when this local issue is happening, you've got a problem of a community that is armed, because all of Syria's communities got armed during the civil war. And then you have the added problem of Israel entering into the scene, and we have Syrian government forces in the region trying to secure the calm while Israeli airstrikes are targeting government forces and their weaponry.
But why does Israel keep entering to protect Syria's Druze?
Well, I mean, there's the official position, and then there's the underlying geostrategic positions. Israel has taken it upon itself to be the self-proclaimed defender of the Druze community. For that, we need to look at this Druze community and how it is spread. It's one of these groups in the Middle East that fell between all these borders that were created when in the modern states. And, we have the map here of the Druze community, which is spread across Israel, Lebanon, and Syria. In Israel, they're a very small minority, but unlike the Palestinians in Israel, they were incorporated into the Israeli state. Druze members serve in the Israeli military, they have representatives, and they can be very influential. Lebanon also has a Druze community that can play a very important role in Lebanese politics. Syria has the largest Druze community. Under the Assad regime, the Assad regime kept telling Syria's minorities, since the Assad regime was themselves an Alawite minority, they kept reinforcing this message to Syria's minority communities that we are protecting the minority groups. So now with the fall of Assad, Israel shares an 80-kilometer border with Syria. Israel has also annexed the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory. Israel does not actually want to see Islamic militants on its border, and it has been conducting attacks since the Assad regime fell in a UN buffer zone. So Israel basically, there are a lot of experts who say that Israel does not actually want a strong sovereign Syrian state because, like Israel can conduct strikes in Lebanon, that's what Israel's game is in Syria, basically.
What are relations between Syria's new leadership and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Complex, to say the least. When Assad fell, President Shara said that he would abide by a 1974 ceasefire agreement, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared it null and void. Now, behind the scenes, there were Israeli officials who were pushing to keep the sanctions on Syria, but US President Donald Trump basically overrode that. Trump met President Shara when he was on a visit to Saudi Arabia, and he has put the Syrian administration under pressure to open relations with Israel. If you ask, what is the average Syrian position? There's a deep enmity between these two states. But a lot of Syrians sort of understand that, they are exhausted with war. They understand that if there was a war with Israel, Syrians stand no chance. But there are really deep issues. Primarily among them is the Golan Heights, which Israel annexed in 1967. And if you remember, President Shara's nom de guerre, his war name was Jolani. It's a very symbolic issue for the Syrians. So Trump essentially wants Syria to join the Abraham's Accord. It's very preliminary at this stage. And, even within the Druze, there's no unified voice. There are several Druze who do not want Israeli intervention into Syria. But when these ethnic tensions, these deadly clashes keep increasing, there are some sections of the Syrian Druze community that fear that the Syrian state cannot look out for their interests and would try to hedge their bets with a powerful neighbor like Israel.